So the next thing that we want to style will be the navigation. So let's get back to the code. Then here we want to target that nav element. The first property that we want to style here will be the width. We want to set it to be 100%. This will be 100%. And then background color 2D to the 4C. Right, so you know where to find these colors. I've already showed you in the previous lecture. So now we're going to set margin to be equal to 0. And then padding should also be equal to 0. We don't want any spaces around. Okay, so let's do a reload. Alright, so the next thing is to actually style the on order list that we have here and also the anchor. Right, so let's get back to the code. Alright, so let's come back to the HTML. If you see the navigation, we have nav and then we have UL. So we are going to be targeting this one next. So let's come back here and then we're going to say nav UL. So the first thing that we want to do here is to remove the list style type. So we want to set this to be equal to none. And then we also want to set the margin to be equal to 0. Same thing for the padding. So margin 0. Padding should also be 0. And then we also want to set the width to be 100%. So we say width 100%. Okay, so let's do a reload. Right. So we can see that everything is stacking up properly right now. So the next step will be to style the LI. Okay, so if you come here again in the HTML, look at the order. We have the nav, UL, and then the LI. So our next step now will be to actually style the LI. So we need to actually join these three together, nav, UL, LI, to be able to target each of the LI that we have here. Okay, so right here we're going to say nav, UL, and then LI. If you look at the LI that we have here, you can see that it is being displayed each on a different line. So what we want to do is to actually display them inline. Okay, so we want them to be on a straight line. So we can use a CSS property which is called Inline Block. So we're going to set the display to be equal to Inline Block. Okay, so this way, if we do a reload now, they will all be on a straight line. All right. So the next thing that we want to do is to give a padding. Okay, so we want to set the padding for top and bottom to be 14 pixels, and then right and left should be 00. All right, so I already explained the shorthand in a previous lecture, so this shouldn't be a problem for you. Let's do a reload. Okay, so now we reload and we see that the navigation is actually coming out nicely. We still need to do a couple of changes. Let's set the size for this should be font size. Let's make it 1 pixel bigger than the normal, so that will be 17. Or we can actually bring the font style to the next rule that we want to define here. So if we come back to index.html, the next thing that we want to target will be the anchor, so which will be the A tag that we have here. Right, so we are going to do the same thing, nav, UL, LI, A. Okay, so we target everything until we get to the A, and then we want to set font size to be equal to 17. We want to set the color to be white, so that will be F in 6 places. We want to set the text decoration to be none. That way the underline will be removed. So if you look at the page right now, there's an underline here. Okay, so when we set the text decoration to none, the underline will be removed. Okay, so we want to align the text to the center. So we say text align should be center. All right, so let's do a reload on the browser. Okay, so we have the color change here, and then we also have the underline removed. Okay, so we can now also target the overstate of this menu. That means when you point your mouse on top of the menu, that is the overstate. So what happens when you point your mouse on top of the menu? We can also actually target that. So we can just grab all of this and then copy it here. Then we can put a column here and then target the particular state. So this is the overstate. There are different states that we can target. So for now, we are targeting the overstate of this link. We want to change the background color. Okay, so when you point your mouse, we want to change the background color. We want to actually change this to DDD. Okay, so this is gray. And then we want to change the color to black. Color should be black, background should be gray. Hash 0 in 6 places or 3 places to give us black. Right, so let's do a reload. So when we move our mouse across, we can see that the background color changes and also the text color changes to black. But right now you can see that it doesn't actually look well because all the spaces at the top are being ignored. This is because if you look at the definition of the LIA that we have here, we did not put a padding. So we can actually set padding, top and bottom, set it to 14 pixels. And then right and left to 16 pixels to actually give some spaces. Okay, so let's do a reload. Okay, so there are some spaces right now, and you can see that when we hover across, it actually displays nicely. Okay, so this is just a basic menu that we are actually building here, but at least you get the idea of how we can actually tweak the various elements making up a menu system. Alright, so one thing that I want to add to our style here before we proceed at the very top. Okay, so we want to target all elements, and then we want to actually say for all of the elements that we are going to use in our project, we want the padding and also the border to be included in the width and the height. And the way that we do this is to use a property which is called box sizing. Okay, so let's say box sizing. This should be equal to border box. Alright, so probably the best way to illustrate this is to actually just create two divs inside of our container. So let's come to the HTML here, and then right here we're going to create two divs. So one is going to be div style. We set the height to be 100 pixels, and then we just give it a border 1 pixel solid red. And then we give it a width of 200. So I'm going to duplicate this, and then for this one I am going to add padding, set this to 30 pixels. Alright, so we have two divs here. Let's set this color to green and then just reload the page. So we have two divs here, and then if you look at the definition, we set this one to be padding of 30, but for this one it doesn't have a padding. But if you look at the result here, you can see that both divs are actually of same height. Okay, so if we come back to our style now and remove the declaration that we have here, save this and then do a reload on the page. Okay, you can see that this div is actually now bigger than this one. This is because the padding is not actually included in the width and the height of the div. But when we actually include that box sizing, border box, so it's actually going to include the padding and borders in the height and the width of the actual element that we are applying it to. So that when we do a reload now, you see that both are actually the same size. Alright, so we want to apply this to every element inside of the document. That's why I put an asterisk here. Okay, so right now we have the container, and then we have our basic navigation setup. In the next lecture, we are now going to be looking at the grid system that we'll be using for this small project in order to make it more responsive. Because right now, let's go over to the browser again. I'm just going to try to install a plugin. It's called this responsive design plugin. Right, so let's take a look at this and also take a look at this. Right, I think I'm just going to grab this one, so add to Chrome. Alright, so we have the plugin actually added here. So if we come back to our page, then let's look at this on a small device. So let's say we want to look at this on an iPhone. So let's come to iPhone 5S portrait. Alright, so you actually see that the menu is breaking into two separate lines. So with responsive design, we can actually tweak how this menu should look like when it is on a screen like an iPhone. right? So we'll be taking care of most of this in the next lecture.